Hey folks, this is Mobile AppSec 101. I'm Tony Ramirez, and this is a course on mobile application security testing. Today we are going to be covering building baselines. This is the fourth video in the Mobile AppSec series. For today's video, we have a couple learning objectives. We'll be covering some ways to establish baselines in your organization, some resources on how to get more out of testing, kind of determine what type of app you have, what kind of coverage you should be looking for, and ultimately using the right types of resources to test apps. We'll also be covering this thing called the mobile AppSec model. We'll get into it, and it's a really important concept to understand because it really is going to dictate how you should be testing and protecting your applications and how you should be prioritizing what should get fixed. So remember that whenever we're actually looking into testing, we're always talking about not testing less, but fixing more. Our goal is to always fix more and make sure that our apps are meeting some baseline. And that kind of leads us to this first question. How do we prioritize these issues? Because ultimately, that's what we're trying to figure out. How do we prioritize something that's high risk versus low risk versus medium risk? And how do we figure out if it's a real issue? But the thing is that not every organization is the same, not every app is the same, so we really want to figure that out early on. This kind of leads us into this concept of having baselines and drivers of those baselines, and for most organizations it's pretty obvious, but in case you don't have one, let's figure that out right now. For some organizations, things like standards, data privacy, compliance, and like IP are all important concepts. But business continuity and reputation are just as important, and I'll tell you why. Your reputation as an organization really does lend itself to whether your app is going to get downloaded or not. But on top of that, business continuity, there are people out there in the field using your app, and if it doesn't work, they're going to go on and tell their staff, don't use that app anymore, it doesn't work anymore. So you want people to keep using that app. On the intellectual property side, you might have something that's sensitive, an IP in there that you don't want stolen or taken from you. And if that gets stolen, that's really another driver behind what your baseline should be. And of course, compliance is always the obvious one. Same with privacy. And those standards are hard to figure out for some people, but once you figure out what your organization does and what you prioritize, it's pretty easy to figure out where you should be aligning. This leads us into app security. This is going to lead us into finding the right resources, the right guidelines and methodologies for figuring out how to secure our apps. And I'm going to give you a clue. The big topic today really is around OWASP. So if you're not familiar with OWASP, OWASP is the Open Web Application Security Project. And we're not going to talk too much about that today. We're going to talk about a specific project called the Mobile Security Project. The Mobile Security Project was created to kind of give people guidelines on how not only to test mobile apps, but how to develop programs around those mobile apps and secure them. So you have a couple things here. You have the OWASP Top 10, you have the MSTG, and you have the MASVS. And let's actually kind of break these all apart. So really, there's something for everyone in this OWASP mobile security project. And really the first one we want to really talk about is the OWASP Mobile Top 10, because this is really created for developers to understand what are the big issues that they need to be aware of, that they should be avoiding, that they should try to triage before they get into production. And we kind of covered that top 10 earlier on, but it's something to keep in mind when you're talking to developers, because if they're not aware of that, it may be something showing to them. Next on that list is the MASVS, otherwise known as the Mobile Application Security Verification Standard. It is a mouthful, but we can just call it MAVS for right now. And what that is it's for establishing baselines, establishing what your organization should be concerned about, understanding what your app might be doing, and having kind of some guidelines on what you're protecting. It's important to know those things, because if you don't know what you're protecting, then you're probably not protecting it. And that's the reality. Next, we're going to get into the MSTG, otherwise known as the Mobile Security Testing Guide. And that is the cookbook of mobile security testing issues. So if you're, trying to figure out how you should be testing these apps, what you should be looking for, and, you got this checklist already, maybe you have like this list of things that are filled by policy, but you want like a cookbook of like, these are the issues, these are the things I need to be looking at. That's what MSTG is. It's a living doc. It's being changed constantly because mobile's still changing and there are new things coming up every day. And being able to tackle those things and kind of have some guidelines in the industry is super important. So MSTG really does fulfill that. And that kind of leads us to our last piece, which is the checklist. The mobile security testing checklist is exactly that. If you're getting a pen test done or you're doing security testing on your apps, you really want to have a checklist. And that really allows you to do two things. Number one, if somebody else is testing your app, you can vet them. Number two, if you're testing your own app, you want to make sure that you're going through all those points. So all these guides, they're for iOS and Android, and they're things to keep in mind. They're open source, and they're available out there. They were part of that course material. So remember earlier I said, hey, these are good docs to have. We're going to reference them later. Well, guess what? We're referencing them right now, and it's exciting, ain't it? So let's actually dig in a little bit on MASVS. What MASVS does is it translates that MSTG guide, that mobile security testing guide. So we have all these lists of checks and all these tests we want to do, and we have a cookbook, and we want to make sure we have full coverage. And the best way to do that is kind of break it up into domains, and that's what MAVS does. So MAVS takes that, it kind of implements a checklist sort of, and not only that, it kind of breaks things up into whether something is high priority, or if it's defense in depth, or if it's a reverse engineering resilience requirement. And we're going to talk about each of those three things in just a moment. But keep in mind that, again, different apps have different requirements. So breaking things up makes sense. We want to be able to have full coverage for every different type of app our organization might be using. So having this idea in our mind that, certain apps have special requirements is important. And that's really going to help us build a better program. So like I said before, MAVS is broken up into 8 domains, and each domain is specific to a different part of mobile application security testing and just mobile in general. For instance, architecture and design, you have data storage issues, you have cryptographic requirements. Not only do you have authentication and session management requirements, but you also have to consider those network interactions where that application is sending out network requests. But if it's not doing it the right way, then it could be insecure. That's different from the authentication and session management that the app might handle. For instance, an app has a login, or an app has some type of OAuth requirement, or it has something else. And on top of that, it has some session management after that authentication has taken place. Those are different domains. You also have that environmental interaction. Like I said, apps can communicate to one another. They have IP or IPCs that they use to communicate between different apps. And that's an important part of testing. Finally, we have that code quality requirement. We talked a little bit about that earlier, how you want to configure your build to be, as secure as possible and leverage all those free security things that they give you in both Android and iOS. And finally, reverse engineering resilience. Those are requirements like protecting your application against reverse engineering, like code obfuscation, device binding, and there's many others, and it really depends on the type of app you're creating. These are requirements that are not made to protect your app from the security issues it already has, but it's made to harden your app and make it harder for attackers out there to find issues in your app. Again, we don't want to obfuscate the security of our apps. We want to harden them, and we want to make sure that they're secure. So I talked a little bit about this like L1, L2, and R, and really it kind of breaks down into standard security, which is L1, L2 is defense in depth, and R is reverse engineering resilience. So like I said before, we have L1, which is like the standard security best practices. We want certain apps to do certain things, and all of them should do those things, because if they're not doing those things, they're really high risk, they're not good things to do. They're really indications that developers or security teams or enterprises aren't really caring and making the effort to make their apps secure. Then there's L2. You have applications that have special requirements. Those could be things like performing certificate pinning or other technologies that really harden your app. And these are applications that really do have some, additional requirements. And we're going to kind of break these up in a moment and actually talk about the differences between all of them. And then finally, reverse engineering resilience. I kind of told you before, but we're looking at device binding, code obfuscation, anti-tamper, and other things. But again, they're not meant to cover up for poor security. They're meant to enhance the security of the app, of an already secure app. What we're ultimately getting at is policy. We want to create policy that's effective and it makes sense for that app. Because if we're creating policy and controls that don't make any sense to the people who are creating these apps and implementing these controls, they're going to ask us, hey, why is this control in place? It doesn't seem like it matters. It doesn't seem like it actually causes any effect. And we want to be able to have guidelines that show people, hey, Other people in our industry are doing these things, and we should be doing it too because it is a security best practice. But not only that, it affects our app in this way and this way if we don't implement those controls. And those controls are crucial to making our apps more secure. So let's actually talk a little bit about how we can implement this L1, L2, and R. And the way you implement it is this thing called the mobile AppSec model. And here's what I'll tell you, it's kind of like threat modeling, but we're actually considering how that app runs and how that app is threat modeled itself. It's application threat modeling. And let's start off with L1. L1 is basically going to be the standard security option, and it's going to be examples of like apps that really don't do much, apps that really don't have any complex compliance requirements, don't really do anything too complex in general. An example might be an app that's a newsfeed app, or an app that doesn't have any authentication that maybe shows you the weather, or maybe it's an application that, really just doesn't do much, like conference apps would be another example. But those apps still have security requirements. Each of those apps could leak information about you if they're using insecure information, insecure communications. They could do things incorrectly and lead to phishing issues or other issues because, insecurities in these simple apps really do cause problems down the line. If we get into L2, we're talking about defense in depth apps. So now we're talking about apps that maybe deal with financial information or healthcare information. And these apps actually have a complex compliance requirement, and we want to make sure that we're doing our best to protect that data. The interactions in the app itself are pretty simple. So these apps may be like a banking app, but itself doesn't really do anything too complex like some other apps that maybe do peer-to-peer interactions, or maybe they do something else that's a little more interesting, but they still have a compliance requirement. So we really want to make sure that they are in fact secure. When we start getting into this L1 plus R, you're probably thinking to yourself, why would I want an app that has reverse engineering resilience but doesn't really have these defense in depth requirements? Well, there's a lot of good apps that are examples of this. Something like a maybe app that tells you what the song that you're listening to is at that moment, or maybe an app that's for playing games. These don't really have a complex compliance requirement, but they have a lot of IP. And that IP needs to be protected. So if that IP isn't protected, somebody might be able to reverse engineer the app, figure out how the API works, figure out something in the source code that's important. And once they figure that out, they're able to recreate that app themselves, pirate it, do something bad, maybe even give themselves like fake currency within the app if it's a gaming app or something else. All of these are totally part of the attack scenario for these apps. So it's important to understand that. And that's why it's so important that those apps have reverse engineering resilience. And I bet you can guess what the final one is. L2 plus R. These are really complex apps. These are apps that are doing, really important things. A perfect example might be something that has peer-to-peer money sharing. Maybe it has some sensitive IP in there, but also has like credit card transactions that are handled within the app. And there are tons of options that we could go into like different types of apps, maybe like a Venmo or maybe something like an Uber, but we really want to be sure that these apps are secure because again, they're dealing with sensitive IP, they have a compliance regulation body that they need to adhere to. So if they're not adhering to those standards and they're not protecting their IP, they're in trouble. They have a really big attack surface, and because of that, they really need more protection than that L1 app, and they have more reverse engineering resilience requirements than that L2 app. So, we want to make sure that, these are the apps that are getting, additional coverage, that they're getting the right type of coverage too. And ultimately, our AppSec model kind of helps us figure out where these apps fall. So actually, our next thing would be to actually try to apply this to some apps that we might be using today. So figuring out where you fall really comes down to a few things. We're going to figure out like what the purpose of that app is, what type of data that app handles, and then let's consider kind of some perspective, like how do we use that app and why do we care about that app? It's important for us to consider that because that really does help us determine where that app falls. So let's take the business expense app. Let's take an app like, I'm not going to say any company names, but everyone has a business expenses app. You don't get paid through that app, but you're submitting receipts to it. That app itself doesn't seem like it has a lot of, peer-to-peer interactions, but it does handle financial values. And really, you want it to be secure, and it does have some compliance requirements. So that means it's an L2 app. This one's pretty straightforward. So let's do another example. In this case, we have a conference app. I kind of gave this one away, but think about it. Limited functionality, there's not really much going on in the app, there's not any peer-to-peer interactions, and really it's just there to show you a schedule, maybe tell you what's going on at what time, giving you a map of where to go in certain events, and it really shouldn't be collecting much data, it shouldn't be communicating insecurely because those are major issues. So we do want some standard security behind that app. So this app is an L1. Next one is one that almost everyone uses now, a corporate messaging app. You can fill in the blank, but there's a ton of them out there, and more often than not, people are using these applications to really communicate information that they shouldn't. Maybe if you're a developer, you might be sharing code snippets of stuff that really shouldn't be shared through a third-party app, but it happens. That's the way it is. Everybody is trying to communicate as quickly as possible. But not only that, this is a business-critical app. This is an app that is going to hold sensitive data, and that data might be, held to compliance. So this is an L2 plus R. This is a really crucial app, and it requires additional protections. So being aware of what those protections might be, you want to make sure that this app is actually secure, that it's device binding. So if, somebody tries to set up an account on their device somewhere else, it won't allow them because it's bound to the device that it was originally set up to. The final example is the gaming app. So we talked a little bit about how that gaming app might be affected, but let's actually consider how somebody might reverse engineer that app, modify multiplayer competitive play, and make themselves number one. They might change certain pay-to-play features into free-to-play. There's a ton of examples. And as a user, we wouldn't really care. We see those things and we think, well, back in my day, we just hit up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, start, and, continued on. But in mobile games where, they're relying on this pay and play model where they're trying to make revenue off these games, it really is important for them, to protect them. So we went through this video pretty quickly and we covered a lot of information, but in short, we covered this idea of creating security baselines and really relying on OWASP to help us create them because it is the industry guide in mobile to do that. On top of that, we also came up with some testing resources. So if you're a security pen tester or somebody who wants to get into that or is just kind of curious about what's going on and what your pen testers are doing when they're testing that and making sure they're doing it the right way, we have some information now. And finally, we've come up with kind of a threat model. The AppSec model really does help us figure out where that app should be and how we should apply security requirements against it. So keeping that in mind as you go forward, always consider what are the important policy decisions that you're making in your app.